Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to learn about an important feature of programming languages, functions. Functions allow you to run certain lines of code multiple times without copy pasting the same code again and again. Let's see why they are used with an example. Let's define a function by using the def keyword def followed by the function name, which follows the convention of variable names, followed by parentheses. Let it be empty for now. End it with a colon. The lines below the function that are indented are part of that function. Let's keep this function empty for now. A function must have at least one line, so let's use the pass keyword that just passes the line, doing nothing. So we have created a simple function that does nothing for now. We have defined a function here, but in order to use that function, we have to call it. A function is called by using the name of the function, followed by parentheses. Let me have our function inside a print statement for now. If I run the program, we see it prints nothing as we didn't assign any function to it yet. Now while calling the function, if I don't specify the parentheses, we can see the memory address of the function. We might not want this, so in order to call a function to execute the code that it contains, we must specify parentheses. Now let's make things interesting. Let me add a print statement inside the function. Now if I run the program without calling the function, we see that even though we have a print statement in our code, we get no output. So in order to use the function, we must call it. So if I run it, we can see the string hello world is printed. We didn't print anything outside the function at all. We just called the function. So control goes from our current line and goes to that function to execute the statement inside it. Calling a function is commonly called as invoking a function. Now assume that I want the values that are inside the function for us to use outside the function. We cannot use the contents of the function in a normal manner as we might expect. Let me assign hello world to a variable a. If I try to print the value of a outside the function, it says that a is not defined. This is because as soon as the function end is reached, the values that are assigned inside the function are deleted. In order to get the values we want from the function, we have to return the value from the function to the line that calls the function. In that case, we use a return keyword followed by the value we want to return. This returns whatever we specify it to give. If I return the value a, which contains a string, the line calling the function now holds the value hello world in it. So if we print the line that is calling the function, we can see that it prints the message we got from the function. Since this line holds a value, we can also assign it to a variable to use it for our purpose instead of just printing. Let me assign a variable called value from function and assign it to the return value of the function. Now if I just print the variable, we can see that it prints the same message thanks to the return function that generously gave us its values for us to use. Let me create a variable called name and assign it to Mike. We talked about receiving values from functions. Now let's talk about the inputs that we can give to the function. The inputs to a function are called arguments. We just specify a variable name as an argument. Let me call it person inside a parenthesis. That variable name is assigned a value we give to the function while calling it. So let's call the function and pass the name variable inside the parenthesis. This name is given to the function. The function copies the value in the name variable to the person variable. So Mike is now the variable person. If I print the name of that person with hello, and if I run it, we can see that it prints hello Mike. Let me demonstrate quickly why functions are useful. Let's print hello Mike a few times. Assume that we just knew that Mike is from France. So in order to greet him in French, we use the French word bonjour. If I want to change hello to bonjour, I have to change it in all the 5 lines. In reality, this might be even more. But if I use the function to print it, I just have to change it one time, only in the function. If I run, We can see all the lines have changed by only changing the single line inside the function. Thus the function prevents us from repeating ourselves so that we can reuse the same codes anywhere we want. Let's create a useful function that can calculate the area of a circle when we give it a radius. So let's create the function. We name it circle area. Our function receives radius as its arguments. Let me call it r. It is a good programming practice to write a docstring to let the users know what the function does and how to use it. This does not interfere with the functions in any way. A docstring is written inside triple quotes. That's simple and up to the point. So in order to compute the area of a circle, we need the value of pi. We can substitute 3.14, but we have to be as precise as possible. Let's import the value of pi from the math module. Let me define a variable called area and calculate the radius, that is pi times r squared. In order to send the area back to the calling function, we use the return area. Let's receive the value from the function in the variable area as well. Now let me call the function and pass in the radius that we want to compute and print the area variable. If I run it, we can see the area is computed. Let's compute more area with different radii. Just call the function with the radius. I just print the area directly returned by the function without assigning the variable. The choice is yours. If you want to add anything to the area we received, we do those changes and print the value later. You can see now that we get many area values by just calling the function instead of writing the same every time to compute a new radius. Assume that our user needs to use the circle area function we just created, and suppose he has imported the code from another program. He might not know how our functions work, so he can type help and pass our function. So if I print it, you can see the exact docstring we specified while creating the function has been printed here. So this should help him and give him idea how we might use the function without trying to locate the code. Now let's pass two arguments to the function. Let's create a function to compute the area of a rectangle. This area requires length and breadth. In order to receive two arguments, use two variables L and B separated by a comma. Let's use docstring, and we can just return L times B. Let me create length and breadth variables and assign some values. Now call the function and pass them. Since we have two variables, separate them by a comma. If I run this code, we can see that it prints the area of the rectangle, that is 5 times 10, that is 50. So till now we have been passing the variables in a positional manner. The first variable we pass to the function is assigned to the first variable in the function, and the second variable to the second variable in the function. That is, length is assigned to L and breadth is assigned to B. These type of arguments are called positional arguments as they depend on the position of the variables to pass to the function. If I have breadth first and length second, and if I print them, you can see that breadth contains the value of length and vice versa. This might be a problem if we have more than 4 or 5 arguments, and then remembering the position of every variable might be annoying. Here, keyword arguments can be helpful. We use keyword arguments while passing to the function. We have an equal sign. The function arguments are assigned to the value we want to pass. And since function arguments are L and B, we assign B equals breadth and L equals length. So now even though we have changed the order of the function arguments, they are received correctly. We can see that L prints the value of length 10 and B prints the value of breadth, that is 5. So now instead of remembering the position of the arguments, a user can just pass in the values to the name of the arguments in any order. You just have to know the argument variables inside the function. There is another subtle issue. A function might require many values like verbose and index, which will be only used when necessary by the user. We don't want the user to pass the argument values that he doesn't even care about. But if we try to avoid any argument, you can see that there is an exception stating that there is two required values, we passed only one. And now if I don't pass anything, it says we've given it 0 arguments. So in order to avoid this, we use default values set to the function arguments. The arguments are assigned to this default value when we don't pass while calling the function. So if I run it, we can see that it printed 1 and 2. Instead of raising an error, they are assigned to a default value. Now if I pass only breadth value, which has the value of 5, but since we didn't specify the length value, it takes the default value of 1. If I pass both length and breadth, L and B now contains 10 and 5 and no default values are assigned. Since these arguments use default values, they are also called default arguments. We can use both positional and keyword arguments while calling the function, but the positional arguments should always be mentioned first and then keyword arguments. So length is positional here and B equals breadth is keyword. You can see that they print 10 and 5. But if I change length value as keyword first and then breadth value as a positional argument, it raises an error. So positional arguments should always be passed first if we have both kinds of arguments. We might come across a function with star args and star kwargs as arguments. This might look frightening at first, but they are quite simple. The args and kwargs can be any name we want, but for readability we stick to the convention of using args and kwargs. So arguments and keyword arguments. Let's have only star args for now. Star arg means any number of positional arguments that are passed while calling the function are stored inside the args as a tuple. If I pass random number of positional arguments and if I print args and run it, you can see that it prints all the positional arguments we passed to the function. Assume that this is an average function that averages all the numbers. So if I don't know how many arguments a user is gonna pass and I got to add all of them and find its average, I use star args to store all of the values as a tuple. And I can then process the data using a loop or maybe a simple built-in function to compute the average. So if I have 5 numbers as arguments, then the arg contains all the 5 numbers as a tuple. To calculate average, I can use sum of tuple divided by its length and return its average. Now let me have only star kwargs. And this means any number of keyword arguments that are passed while calling the function are going to be stored as a dictionary in the variable kwargs. So kwargs is a dictionary that stores all the key value pairs. If I pass a random number of key value arguments and let me print it and run, you can see that the keyword arguments are stored as a dictionary. Let me have a simple function to print the length of the dictionary. If I pass keyword arguments to the function, then kwargs contain them all as a dictionary. I can return the length of the dictionary for the simple function. So a function containing both star args and star kwargs stores all the arguments as tuples and dictionaries. If I pass arbitrary number of both positional and keyword arguments, and if I print the args and kwargs and run them, we can see that the positional arguments are stored in the tuple and keyword arguments are stored in the dictionary. Hence, if a function is called with an unknown number of arguments, they are going to be passed. Then we use the star args and star kwargs. You can also see star and star being used while calling a function. Here, star just unpacks a list and star unpacks a dictionary. So if I have a list that should be passed as arguments, I create a list example and pass the list that containing the positional arguments that I want to pass, and a dictionary that should be passed as keyword arguments. If I print them, we can see that printing args displays the list elements and kwargs prints the dictionary elements. If I just use them without star, then both of them will be stored as a positional argument inside the function in args, as they are passed in a positional manner. And this is not what we want. I hope this video gave a good introduction to functions. Thank you for watching.